Alright, I'm gonna real quickly show you guys how to create a displacement map using an image like this. I've just opened it using file open, and I found this image which is the water.jpg, which should be in your class folder. And right off the bat I'm seeing some little defects around this image, so I'm gonna fix that real quick by using our spot healing brush tool. Grab that with a small brush, the size about the diameter about that big. That should cover up your defect here. I'm gonna just brush over it on your background layer, and I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna make the brush a little bit smaller, and I'm gonna brush off these small speckles as well. Now for displacement map, you need to, instead of being this colorful image, you need to get it into a black and white high contrast looking image. You could make it with a colored image, but it's always easier if you have a higher contrast. So in order to do that, you need to go to your layers panel right here, and right next to it you'll see the channels tab. If you can't see that there, it should be under window, under channels right there, and it should pop up if you can't find it. But right now it's right there, and once you click it, you'll see that it has an RGB channel, a red channel, a green channel, and a blue channel, which independently corresponds to each of the colors that make up combines to make up this image right here. So right now I can see that the red channel, which has the darkest looking thumbnail right there, is looking like the most contrast. So I'm going to click that real quick, and if you could click on the other ones, and you'll see how they don't have as much contrast. But on the red one, it has the most contrast because there's really no red. And like if you turn on the RGB, the whole thing is blue. So the lack of red means there's going to be more contrast on your channel because there's not much red for us to work with. So I'm going to click that, and what I need to do is I want to make a file using just this version of our channel. So I'm going to right click on that layer right on this empty spot. I'm going to hit duplicate channel, and this pops up a smaller dialog. And on that one, I'm not going to really deal with this area, but I am going to drop down the document option right here, and I'm going to select new. And once you select new, you're able to give it a name. I'm going to call this displacement. And once you're done with that, you could go ahead and hit OK, and that's going to create a new file for us. You'll notice that on the tab right next to your original file, a new file with the name that you just gave has now appeared. And here is where we're going to do a couple more adjustments for our displacement layer. The first thing we want to do is, if you zoom in, you'll see a lot of detail here. In this instance, there's not really much, but in most instances, like say fabric or something, there'll be a lot of detail in your image. You really don't want that detail. You just want just these ripples and effects, and that's about it. So we need to get that and get rid of this detail, so we need to smooth it out, and we're going to do that by going to filter and applying a blur on top of all this. And I'm going to Gaussian blur right here. I'm going to click that one time, and I'm going to play with the sliders just to see where our best, like the point where we lose that graininess, but we don't go as so far into losing the entire image. So we need to fine tune it, play around with it, look at, just eyeball it. I'm thinking right there is real good. It's getting some smoothness right there, but you can still see the ripples. So I'm at a 2.5 for this image, and I'm going to hit OK. I'm gonna commit to that. And at the same time, the contrast is really not punchy here. It's very gray. The darks are there, but they're not super dark, and the whites are there, and they're not super white. So what we want to do is we want to go to we're gonna apply an adjustment to this layer so it makes it all fully black and white pretty much. So I'm gonna click on our layers and click outside somewhere just to get a deselect. Now you'll notice that our background layer, you can't really add anything because this whole thing is called an alpha file format, where you can see up at the top it will say alpha. You can't really add any effects by using much of the layers and stuff. So you need to embed this effect right into it. So in order to do that, I'm going to go to image adjustments, and here you'll see that our curves and levels are highlighted, but not really any of the others because we're working in alpha. We're not working in RGB or CMYK. So the best you could do is do any corrections with these two. So for this instant, I'm gonna go ahead and hit that levels option, and the way I got there was I went to image adjustment levels. So we're gonna go to the levels, and you'll see that our histogram here, you'll see the meter, you'll see that the black side, the dark side right here, it kind of starts, there's nothing there, but it starts from there right next to it. And on the white side, everything really very low until up to like maybe here or somewhere in the middle, where that's when the data starts to spike up. We could manually do this, but let's make it easy by going and hitting this auto right here, and the computer will manually scrunch up all this data, so you're not carrying any of this blank data. You got your black value right there, which now turned your image a bit darker. You might have noticed it. If I toggle this preview on and off, you'll see how that value has made it much more contrasty and darker. So that's exactly what we want. And with that selected, we're going to hit OK. And now we want to save this displacement file. And the reason why we're saving it is because we want to use this as a reference for the file, for the water JPEG file, where we're going to put that text and use this file as the reference. So let's go ahead and go to File, Save As. And here I want you to save it as a where's my thing? I want to use this. Yeah, I want to save it over here. I want to save it as displacement, and just hit save, and make sure you're saving it as a PSD. And once you save that, do you want to replace it? I already got a displacement here, that's why it's asking, so I'm just going to say yes. Once you're done, we're done with this file pretty much. Now we're going to go back to our water.jpg, and on our channels, we're going to go back to our channels and see if you go back to our layers, you'll see that it's colorful here, but it's black and white here. That's because we're still selected on that red channel. This might not happen to you, but if it's the case that's happening, this is the reason. So I would just click that RGB layer, which turns on everything, and then click outside one time just to get a deselection, and then switch back to layers. And now we could start doing our work here. So what I'm going to be doing is using our text tool here, the type tool, the horizontal type tool, and I'm going to click that once, and I'm going to type something right here. I'm going to type in water sports, and use a really thick font for this. I'm going to use that font that I had was really good, but a font that everyone might have should be a font called Impact. You could see what I'm doing right here. You could just type in a font and it should pop up here. Narrow your selection, and I want this to be in all caps. And the way if I already got something typed in and you want to turn them all caps, the easiest way to do it is by going to Window, Character, or if you can have your character panel already here, you could click that, and then at the bottom here, you might not see them. If you can't, you could turn you should be able to find them over here too, but right here at the very bottom of your character panel, you'll see a bunch of T's, and each T has its own value. You got your bold, your italics. This is the one that we're looking for, the 2 T's, which if you hover over it and wait for a little second, the tooltip will say all caps. That's what we need. So if you have a selection made, make sure that text is selected, and then hit that double T, and then it converts that regular type case into all uppercase. So with that done, I want to select the text, and I'm also going to move our text leading here, the line, what's the exact term? I forgot. If you hover over any of these things, it should tell you exactly what it is leading. There it is. And we'll set the leading to about that much, and once I'm done, I want to hit this check mark up here to say that I'm done with the commit, and it burns it in. I'm going to zoom out a little bit on this one, and I'm using my move tool to select our font, and I'll get this font somewhere over here in the middle, and I'm gonna hit Alt and Shift on my keyboard you'll see it at the bottom here what I'm pressing, and I want to drag it out. On a Mac it should be option shift or command shift, I don't know, forgot the key combination on a Mac. But once you get that nice size up here, about that big, I'm gonna hit OK, and then I'm again I need a darker color font. So if you want to change your font color, you could just use the type tool again, and then double click and select everything on your the text that you want to change. And up here on your type settings, you could select a darker color. For this, I'm really using a really dark gray, and I'm gonna hit OK. Now, what my goal is to make this text up here look like it's underneath this water, like pretty much on the floor of a pool. So what I need to do is first off, it's a text layer. You'll see the T over here, but in order to apply the effect, the filter that we want, this text layer needs to be converted or rastered into a layer that can accept and any filter adjustments. So right now it really can't, so you need to go ahead and right click that layer and find convert to smart object. This will create that text layer, if you click it, into a smart object, and that little icon right next to it indicates that it's no longer a type layer, it's a smart layer. What a smart layer can do is you can't really change the text from here anymore, but if you double click this file, it'll open that smart layer. Here, let me demonstrate it real quick. You'll see that it now opened that layer, and here you could change the text and the color and any value that you want from here. So I'm gonna hit no because I don't want to change anything. I'm gonna tab back to our water tab, and here, well, now that we have converted into a smart object, now we could go ahead and apply the filter that we want. So I'm gonna hit my move tool and get a deselect. Actually, I'm gonna select that water sports layer, and now I'm gonna go to filter up top here, and right here at the bottom I'm gonna find a thing called, so on the filter menu I'm gonna go down to distort and find displace, and here it's gonna give you this little option. The higher this number is at the top, the horizontal and the vertical numbers, it's gonna make your distortion be more distorted, in another lack of another term. But I'm gonna keep it at about 15 here, and on the displacement map I'm gonna keep that setting at stretch to fit, and on the undefined areas I'm gonna keep that as repeat edge pixels. That means it's just take into account anything around beyond the edges of our selections. I'm gonna select OK on it, and then it's going to open up another file, and here it's going to ask you to find that displacement file, and it should be a PSD as it should indicate right there. So I'm going to scroll down and find that displacement file that I saved earlier, and I'm going to hit open, and Photoshop is going to do all the work for you and make it look distorted depending on the waves of the file that you created earlier, that displacement.psd file. And this is somewhat what I want. Now I'll show you the difference. Now I had a 15 value. If I undo this and I go back to displace, distort, displace, and say I put a smaller value like 10, make sure you change both of these so they're all both the same. I'm gonna hit OK. I'm gonna file the same file that I found earlier. I'm just showing you what difference it makes. It's now a little bit less distorted than the one that we saw earlier. Now that we got the bending and all the displacement added to our type layer, now it still looks like it's just hanging above the water. We need it to look like it's under the water. So this is where you bring your blend modes into action. So with that water sports layer selected, I'm going to drop down the blend mode, and I'm going to use one of these modes. I'm going to use soft light for this case. And with that selected, now it really looks like it's under the water, and it's forming to these ripples on top, and it looks like it's actually there instead of being just floating on top. So that's how you do displacement maps in Photoshop. You could go ahead and further add some blurring just to get the text be less sharp looking, because underwater nothing looks really sharp. So that's how you do that. And hope this helps. I'll see what you guys create in your homework. So thanks for watching.